This artwork is designed for you guys to put whatever you want onto this lighter. But today I'm doing flames because I think that's pretty cool. And it kind of goes along with the theme of the lighter, right? I've got a big chunk of 7-ounce tooling leather, which is about the perfect weight for this lighter. I could easily go up to 8 or 9 ounce if you wanted something really chunky. Or you could increase the size of the welt. Here's a little prototype I whipped up. It wasn't quite right, but I got all the bugs worked out in the pattern. So once you've got it printed out at 100% scale, all we have to do is cut it out and then lay the pattern out on your leather. You guys are probably wondering where I got these fancy pattern weights, and I actually make them because I couldn't get them anywhere else. If you're interested in buying some for yourself, check out my Etsy store because there's nothing better than a tool made by a maker. Speaking of tools, you're going to notice on this pattern it has all these giant holes, and I'm going to show you a trick on how to cut those out. Unless you're like me and have all the fancy tools in the world. This is a gasket maker that I use, but if you don't have one, you can easily just cut this out using your sharp knife or punch a series of holes using a smaller punch. It will save you a ton of time if you're very exacting when you cut out the outside of this pattern. When I use a knife, I always cut from the inside of the curve outwards so that I can't slip when I'm doing this. Or you could just use a hole punch and cut those little half circle shapes. All in all, a good sharp knife makes quick work of this part of the project, and it's starting to look like something already. Quickly get this welt cut out, and then I get to try it on for the first time and see what it's going to be like. Oh yeah, this is going to be one cool lighter case. The leather on this pattern for the welt is purposely made a little bit long, so you have to trim it to length at this point to make it match. There we go, that's fitting a little better. When I'm prepping leather for tooling, I want the core to be saturated, but I want the surface to actually be dry. So what I'm doing is I'm applying water to one side and I'm letting it soak in. Now this takes a few minutes, so don't rush it. Get it nice and evenly coated, and then walk away and let it dry. I'm going to put one of my cutoff pieces next to it so I can see exactly when it's back to the original color. And in the meantime, I'm going to do a little bench cleanup. The other thing we need to do is get out our tools. I'm getting out my swivel knife, I'm going to run it over the strop and get it nice and sharp because it cuts so much better when it's nice and stropped. I don't actually require a lot of tools to do this. I'm going to use a smooth beveler to do the foreground elements and push those flames down. Then I'm going to move on to the background and use my stippling tools to add a texture to the background. Now that I've gotten everything prepped, I can check my leather and look at that. The color's almost back to normal, which is exactly where I want it to be. It should be cool to the touch, but dry. Then I'm going to just simply trace with my stylus and transfer the pattern onto my leather. Now I could use fancy transfer paper, but it's absolutely unnecessary. I use regular printing paper all the time for one-off patterns. I'm going to cut all of my lines with my swivel knife, and the knife should be cutting nice and smoothly and not dragging in the wet leather at all. If it's dragging at all, it's either too wet or too dry, one of the two. It's really important to get into the corners and make them nice and crisp and clean. I always cut away from any perpendicular join of two lines. I've let that dry overnight and it is looking pretty cool. Now before I glue this together, I need to rough up this welt. If you don't have one of these fancy tools, you can just use a metal file or a piece of sandpaper. Hand stitching has got to be one of my favorite things to do. It is so rewarding to have a finished product that is nicely hand stitched. Now that I have all the holes punched in it, all I have to do is stitch it up. What a fail. Of course, the lighter I have is out of fluid. Let's try this again. Well, that's a little better. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, remember to subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll see you very soon where you never know what we're going to be building next.